So what do you say? We make a head start. Very, very welcome to this session on entertainment and media. My name is Joakim Jardenberg, and my only function today, I'm used to talking a lot, so this is going to be tough for me, because my only function today is to introduce the speakers, to extroduce the speakers and get them off stage in time, and to bring the next one on. And also, hopefully, to get some interaction going with you guys. So don't be afraid to ask questions, jump in, make a mess in here. It's okay. We can handle it. So actually, without further ado, are you almost ready with your eating, Eric? Okay. I would like to say, just today iTunes made a big fuss about Beatles being a part of iTunes, and that would be big news 40 years ago. Today, I think there is so much more interesting happening in the music scene, and it's not all about Spotify. I would say that our first speaker here, Erik Wahlforss from SoundCloud, is really what music is all about, and what music is gonna be all about in the year 2020. So, Erik Wahlforss, please take the stage and tell us what's happening.
Hello? Yeah, cool. So, slightly unprepared, very fragmented day, and I have my talk sent to myself on an email. So, the first thing is, we're going to talk future here. The good news is the future is already here. That's really, really nice, in fact, when you start looking and you start turning some stones and kind of look for the signs, you will see that it's actually already here. It's like, that's the very sort of standard quote from William Gibson. It's already here, it's just not evenly distributed yet. That's true. It's really true, especially in the audio space, in the video space, basically all kinds of media and distribution on the web. That is the case. It is here. We only have to sort of try and dissect and try to understand what is actually the future and all of the stuff that's out there already. I'm going to try to, I think, I'm going to be slightly unstructured today because I haven't really rehearsed this a lot, unfortunately. I have a few small things to say. Not sure how I'm going to be on time either, so you'll have to basically abort if things go out of hand. I want to try and keep this interactive as well, so let me try to get through the few small bites of things that I wanted to say first, and then we can take it from there. So, I maybe say something really quickly about SoundCloud. It's a platform not unlike Flickr or YouTube. It's a way for anybody to take their sounds from anywhere to everywhere. That's basically what we do. It's all kinds of audio on the web, everywhere. All kinds of devices. It's a platform, really. So, that said, I am a big believer in basically access. So in terms of distribution, I think we're talking about, I'm going to be quite general today and talk just about media distribution, how I see it in general. I think it's going to be about access. So we see this with basically Spotify. So for example, Peter Sunde said when they started the Pirate Bay that by the time they're ready with this stuff, or when this is over, they're going to be completely irrelevant, which is exactly true. What's happening is basically YouTube, Flickr, SoundCloud, things like Spotify for music is taking over. It's all about access. So if we look at, for example, the book space, which is very relevant today, the same thing is going to happen there. So basically, they don't really have a serious alternative, because what's going to happen if they don't do it is they're going to see a mayhem of piracy breaking out. So it's going to be history repeating, basically. So they have to move quickly to some kind of access-based paradigm. So that was my first little bit. And this is not exactly news. It's been around for a long time. It's just that in all the different verticals, all the different industries, people have to start looking at this and see how their particular vertical can turn into a sort of an access-based model. So yeah, and in my email I've written, so let's get on the access track, for Lord's sake. The next level of distribution, how I see it, I think it's basically two things. Two primary things that I could quickly on sort of back on the envelope could come up with. The first thing is probably that it's going to be distribution of attention to a high extent. It's basically about smart networks. I mean, the social graph is everywhere, but basically reaching the right people exactly at the right time with all these pieces of media. So this is going to be super, super important. I've written some random things here, like social fabric programming. And I really think that's key. If you're able to script social interaction between people, I mean, I sound a bit like Mark Zuckerberg here, very nerdy, looking at something like sociology, but I think that's key. Basically, if you can do that, then you can win. Second thing, distribution is going to be redefined as a word. So distribution used to be about shipping, for example, plastic discs to people through a very sort of complicated network of shops and stuff, physical things moving. What it is now is a bit more vague, and the interesting part is it's something that is in motion currently. It's changing. So it's basically, right now, distribution can be something like a remix contest. So it can be actually producers co-producing a piece of music and distributing it to thousands of other people. And some of the people are listening, some of the people are actually co-producing and co-distributing. So it's all about sort of turning it around and actually shifting the meaning of the word distribution into something else. Another example of that would be an application. So a lot of big artists today, I mean, looking a lot at the music space, they have apps. So they have apps, and the apps can do anything. Basically, it's a Turing machine, right? They can do whatever they want. So, so it just means that you can't exactly put your finger on and say, yeah, this label is distributing music from point A to point B. It's basically they're distributing in a way, distributing an experience which can be interactive, which can be much more than just the simple act of distributing the actual piece of media. So, let's see what the email says. Those were the two sort of main things. We can see this, I mean, also in the music space, we can see how the labels are experimenting a lot, and also the independent artists are doing probably more innovative work in this area. You see things like, for example, you have people go and discover an album in a city by checking into different places. I mean, this is almost like a bit boring. It's like social media crap. They're trying it. It's working pretty well, so that's interesting. I think that if we look at sort of when things get really big, it's a lot of the times, I mean, if you have, like an early market, it's very vertical, so everything is vertically integrated, so you have iTunes. What's happening is that after a while, markets get horizontalized, and then you have lots of players, and you have open standards enabling that stuff. I mean, the internet did this in a major way, you could say, by having some open protocols that are very powerful and simple. If you look at something like media distribution, or for example, the case of music, I mean, this is true for all the other cases as well. What we've had is our open formats, and these open formats have prevailed. So you have MP3s. MP3 is ubiquitous. Any device can speak MP3, and they can play back an MP3, they can encode an MP3. So that has enabled this ubiquitous distribution. But that is still about files. That's still about distributing some kind of physical amount of bits from one point to another. So in order to move to sort of the access level of things, which I believe is really the key, I really don't think there is much of an option on a global scale. I'm just pointing that out again so we were clear here. That MP3s will have to be replaced by something else, and that something else is going to be an open standard for access in some kind of way. We're seeing that, but this might take a few years, of course. I mean, this is all business dynamics, but in the end, it's probably going to end up being some kind of open layer that can enable sort of smart access to media in an open way. And this hasn't happened yet. So I mean, there aren't really those formats available. I mean, there are things like RSS, there are things like OAuth. So there are a couple of technology enables, but I think we need to put those pieces together and actually create something that's compelling, that can scale globally. So that's an interesting part. Yeah, finally, a few words on the business model. So, Kevin Kelly has a really good blog where he's writing about the future. I can recommend everybody to read that blog. He's very much a techno-determinist, or technology determinist, I guess. It's not about cloud music. So technology determinist in the sense that technology enables new ways of interaction, enables new business models, enables new behavior, and actually forces people into new behavior. And I think that's probably how I think to a large extent as well. It's a bit boring worldview in one way, but it is true in a way when you look at reality in lots of ways. He had a really great blog post, actually it was already like a few years ago now, called, I looked it up the other day, it's called Better Than Free. If you Google for that blog post is really worth a read, because that basically uncovers how to make money out of the web in general. And so, and that is really like, it's the key to basically these new distribution models and access-based distribution. So if you read that article, I'm not going to really repeat it here. It's about basically these 8 generatives, as he calls it, which will enable you to charge something in this world. I can conclude with a quote from this guy, which was in another email that I replied to my own email, which was to myself, where it says, in the sort of opening of that blog post, he says, when copies are super abundant, they become worthless. When copies are super abundant, stuff which can't be copied becomes scarce and valuable. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Please, bear with me. Who sent you that email?
The last one?
No, the one you were reading from. I mean, it's
no, I sent it to myself.
Really?
So, yeah.
You looked at it like you were seeing stuff for the first time. So.
No, yeah, but I wrote it up very quickly, and then it's still 10 years into the web. You still have, or 15 years.
So it wasn't Alex,
No,
in the shadows.
Or my PR person. no, it's.
So just a second. You say that. I mean, an old saying is that content is king and distribution is King Kong, and that's basically where you come from. I mean, distribution is the shit.
Yeah.
And you also spoke about a turnaround where like the collaborative creation is coming into the distribution part. How does that affect the business model? Does that change anything in the business model when it's not from here to there? Rather a dialogue?
It certainly changes it for the content owners. I mean, the ones who own the intellectual property, so to say. I mean, they need to be more flexible. They need to engage more. They need to be more able to, let's say, charge in different ways around their content. Yeah, enabling that kind of stuff to happen.
Now it's looking more like I was hoping for. A lot of people here. Any questions for Eric? You mentioned Kevin Kelly, and Kevin Kelly has an idea about the one machine, which rather breaks your app idea. I mean, the one machine and the web is the killer app. But you think that everything will be broken down into separate apps? You don't believe in Kevin Kelly's one machine, so you disagree?
No, I think it's the bubble effect. Okay. Like everything just breaks apart and fragments by itself.
Okay.
It's a law of nature almost.
Cool. That's also gravity.
Entropy.
Henrik, you had a question?
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about MP3s and how that is a key history element in the development of music. But I mean, we haven't really seen something similar to MP3s in books or in like videos. Really, there isn't like this one format, this one thing that pushed the development and kind of made all machines talk the same language to be able to play video or read books. So how does that affect the development in those kind of other media types? Yeah. And is it possible to kind of skip that step, or is that something that still has to come in video and books? Or?
But wait, didn't we have that in video in terms of Flash being ubiquitous and everybody just using Flash for video everywhere?
Not really, but.
Are you laughing at Apple?
No,
that's a serious crime.
That's being fixed now.
Yeah, it's being fixed.
Yeah, but that's true. I mean, that is a big problem as well. You see, this device doesn't talk it, so it creates a huge disruption. Suddenly, there are millions of devices who doesn't speak this ubiquitous protocol.
But what about EPUB? Isn't that the open format for books?
Yeah, but does everybody speak EPUB? It's more like, I would say, like it's more PDF. Like everybody speaks PDF. Not everybody speaks EPUB.
We can embed it in the
Yeah.
But isn't the problem rather that there
It's
are...
as big as MP3, I would say.
Henrik, isn't the problem basically that there are standards but not everyone adheres to them yet? I mean, MP3 wasn't suddenly playable on every device. It was an industry standard that everyone adopted to.
Exactly.
Really?
So does everybody have to adopt to one standard before we can kind of see this access-based development, or can we just skip that step and go directly to access? I mean,
that's a good question.
I'm wondering about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have any answer, but maybe the web will be some kind of foundation still that enables that. So you don't really have to give it any thoughts if it's an MP3 or if it's Ogg Vorbis or if it's whatever. I mean, the web is the distraction layer between. We'll see what happens. Anyway, we have some tissues for you. It's cold time, so thank you very much. And we have also, is it ready?
Yeah, you can talk a bit more. So.
Okay, you're gonna have something afterwards here as well. It's an or?
He knows about it.
He knows about it. Okay.
Very
So we'll skip that for now. So
Okay.
good luck with the tissues. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks.
And leave the mic to our next speaker. So we've already had some words here about books and how books really have no serious alternative to go online and to be a part of the big distribution chain that Eric was talking about. How everything is actually a matter of distribution. And our next speaker, Mattias Fyrenius, has voluntarily jumped into this craziness of books. I mean, he's done newspapers at Svenska Dagbladet, he's done television at TV4, solid foundations and working business models almost. And now you're into books. So give a warm hand for Mattias Fyrenius.
So, thank you. Eric mentioned that the future is now. Actually, last night I sat reading a newly published book in Swedish called The Future is Now, 2040. And that is a book written by Swedish scholars, it's thinkers, it's professional, where they are asked to sort of lay out what they see the future is in the area of cultural media. And besides bringing a lot of smart and interesting thoughts to the public, they were really excelling in all these disclaimers saying that, of course, this is 2040, that is so far ahead, we don't know anything, and whatever I write in this book, it cannot and will not be used against me. And it was one guy, my good friend Daniel Sandström at Sydsvenska Dagbladet, he even went so far as saying that the only thing clever written about 2040 is that nobody knows anything, full stop. One of the writer in this book was Sven-Erik Lidman, a Swedish professor, and he also began with all these disclaimers saying that it's hard to discuss the future. But then he suddenly realized that in 2040 I will actually be dead. So that means that I'm totally free. I have no responsibilities for what I'm writing. Then I can totally lay out what will happen in 2040 because I don't have to take any responsibility for that. Today we should talk about 2020. And hopefully I will not neither be dead nor probably working in another industry than I'm working and will be working in. So I guess I have to be a bit more careful with what I'm saying today. 10 years from now, it's actually not a very long time, especially if you are to talk about a business as I will represent, the book business. I read another book a couple of weeks ago where they outlined sort of the story of the book publishing industry in Sweden, and they had divided it into 4 different areas. One pre-1843, sort of from Gutenberg in 1450 and onwards. The second one from 1843, and that was the year when the Swedish Publishers Association was founded. The second phase between 1843 and 1970, and that was when the fixed price was abandoned. The third one, 1970 to 1995, and then it just wrote Amazon. And from 1995 and onwards, the future. The conclusion in this book was written by a guy who said that, yes, the future of the book business will probably be as usual, which means a little bit worse than last year. And then he said, but to be honest, I think it's even going to be worse than usual. So probably even worse than a little bit worse than last year. I don't agree. I don't think it will be as usual. I think we are actually in a period where this industry will see a lot of fundamental changes. And I don't agree. I don't think it will be only worse as last year, or that we're looking into a very dark and hostile future. I do think we are looking into a new era where we really have to rethink the book industry and actually to rethink what the concept of the book is. Before talking very briefly about how I see 2020, I think it can be interesting to see the facts. What is actually happening right now? Where is the future now in terms of the book business? One fact is that the traditional physical bookstore selling physical books, they are in deep problem. They are in problem in Sweden. We see it at KF Media, which is the owners of among others, Akademibokhandeln. We see it worldwide. We see it in Norway. We see it in Finland. We see it in Europe. We see it even in the US, where Barnes & Noble for a long period has been seen as the savior of the book business. They are struggling. They are losing around 10% of their turnover yearly, and now it's going quickly. And we don't see in the near future that this will change. And as I will come back to, I don't think that we will come back to this situation. So the physical bookstore selling physical books, deep problem. Secondly, the internet, of course, has already become a major force in this area. Amazon was founded in 1995, and then we have seen an upspring of numerous e-book stores or bookstores selling books online, especially in Sweden with Adlibris and Bokus as strong actors. And that has really affected the market. They are now in Sweden selling between 20 and 25% of all books sold in Sweden, making it the highest percentage in the world, but you see the same trends worldwide. In the US it's between 15 and 20%, in Austria it's also high, and then the others are coming behind. Thirdly, the concept of e-books, it has been discussed a lot, and we can discuss formats, but I think it's more important to discuss whether people actually read e-books. How many in here has read an e-book? That's a pretty good percentage for being Swedish, but it would have been ridiculous if we had been in the US. E-books in Sweden account for just a few per mil of the turnover. It doesn't really exist as of today in Sweden. It has been around since the late 90s, but it hasn't really caught any traction. But in the States now, this is big business. I've just spent 3 weeks in LA and New York, and there is not something that they think will happen in the future. It is here now. We're talking about more than 10% of the total market now, not in terms of number of copies sold, but in terms of turnover. It is serious business with e-books in the US. That, of course, has to do with the total explosion of tablets in all formats. We can talk about iPads, we can talk about Kindles and so forth. They have the infrastructure, they start to read e-books. George Bush newly published self-biography, Decision Points, the first day sold a bit over 200,000 copies, which is a pretty good number for that type of book. But more interesting was that 30% of that was actually sold as e-book. The e-book is coming, and it's coming very, very strongly. The third fact that we see is a consolidation in the market. We see that all those things that are changing around us really affects the business. In Sweden, you have the two powerhouses in terms of Bonniers and Norstedts and KF Media, and you see this worldwide as well. And that has both sort of internal factors, that the book business is changing, but then of course we see a kind of a threat, or at least we are affected by what is happening with an Apple and Amazon. So that is what we see now, that the changes are really happening here and now. But the topic of today was to say what is happening in 2020, and with my own little disclaimer, remember that I might just be a nobody knowing anything. I think it's still interesting to see the trends that we see today and how they will affect the future. I think the problems facing the bookstores today is unfortunately here to stay. I think that the ones who are in the business of selling physical books in a physical bookstore, they will have problem. They have problem today, and they will have problem tomorrow. I think we have to start using words like reinvent the bookstore. what is the future of the bookstore? Does it mean that bookstores will disappear? In the States now, you see a foreclosure of bookstores in a almost depressing speed. I think that we still will see bookstores in 2020. I think we'll be seeing bookstores that are thriving, that are alive, that are profitable, that are important, but that are pretty different from what we're seeing today. How they will look, hard to say. I think if you look abroad, you see some trends that is interesting to think of. In England, you have a bookstore called Daunt Books that has sort of said that we are not in the mass market business. We are not trying to compete with the Amazons and the Adlibris of the world. We want to be something different. We want to be a physical book community. They started up as a travel bookstore that later on has developed into kind of I wouldn't call it a bookstore, it's a book meeting place where people can come, it's open late in the evening, you can have a glass of wine, they have a lot of speakers there, and of course they sell books as well, but it's not only selling the physical book. Another trend, probably more visible in the States, is that the bookstore is not only about selling books anymore. Anyone who has been into Barnes & Nobles the last 5 years see very clearly that they are focusing on events. They have more than one event per day in an American bookstore, where they have, of course, an author coming, reading from the new book, but a lot of sort of interactive discussions, where the book is put in the middle, but not only sort of selling it, they're bringing something else into the business. You also see that they are very aggressive, I would say, in selling not only books, but things that are related to books. Once again, Barnes & Nobles, they just the other week announced that they are opening up sort of store-in-store concept where they are selling things for kids. It could be games, it could be children's books, everything that is related to a book but not traditionally the book. That is something that I think we will see strongly as well. When it comes to ebook, I think it's obvious that will come, that will be strong. Will it be 25, 30, 40 or 50% of the market? Hard to say. But the growth will be immense, and that will affect the book industry. What kind of reading device we're going to read it on? Hard to say. I was really keen on the Kindle when it came. I was even more keen on the iPad when it came. I've actually stopped more or less reading on my Kindle, and I read all the books on the iPad. In the future, hard to say, but reading on screen and wireless will definitely be an important part of the reading experience. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the ebook actually is. As of today, it is very much a distribution form of the traditional book. You take the actual book as we know it today and just distribute it online. That I think we will see in the future as well. It works pretty well actually. You want to have a reading experience by an author and by an editor who has worked with that book. So that will continue, but I think we're going to see a lot of interesting and fascinating experiments around the book. What is the concept of book? What is an e-book? You have seen some experiment, not maybe all that successful or maybe not even that interesting. One is called the VOOC, the video plus the book becomes the VOOC, where you actually mix the written word and the moving image. And for some genres, I think that will be interesting. I think that traditional ordinary literature will be words. But when it comes to cookbooks, travel guides, other types of more sort of fact-filled books, I think that is a very interesting concept. So that I think we'll see a lot of in 2020. And then, which of course is one of the questions that I and we at KF Media will work hard on, is not only to sort of rethink what the bookstore is or rethink what a book is actually to rethink what the book business is about. That sounds like serious and sort of high-flying words, but I really believe that is what we have to do. I think that whoever will continue to say that we are publishing physical books, selling them in physical bookstores, they are into, what did you say, Eric? A mayhem of, you use some really high-flying, really dark words. those will be not only in deep trouble, I think they will be out of business. But if you change it, if you think of what is actually book publishing about, that is about storytelling, that is about finding a story, that is about editing, working, refining a story, it's about packaging a story, and it's about selling a story. And I think that if we, from the book business, start to approach the market, the readers, the authors in that way, and not only think book, sell it in a bookstore, I think we have fantastic opportunities. It's not going to be easy, but we have a position that we really can use in the physical world, in the digital world, with the written word probably as a foundation, but definitely the story as a foundation. And then we can sell books, then we can sell rights for films. The company that has produced the Stieg Larsson, the Millennium series called Yellowbirds, they have as a slogan, we produce blockbusters out of bestsellers. And they have said that we don't produce any film that doesn't have a book as a foundation that has been a proven concept of success. And I think that is interesting for us once again. If we define ourselves as finding, refining, and capitalizing on stories, I think that is something that we can do a lot more in the future. So those are some very brief trends that we see today that I strongly think that we will see, both continue to see in 2020 and also see the effect of. How severe it will be, hard to say. I am not that worried as many others. The book business, the storytelling business has been around for 560 years, and I think it will be around for a lot longer. I believe in the written word, I believe in the book as such, and I think that if we are just able to adapt to the new future, that will be an interesting future. But then once again, I still might just be a nobody knowing anything, so we don't really know what will happen in 2020, but it will be fun to working there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mattias.
Excellent.
One of my favorite authors, Seth Godin, has said that he's written his last book. He don't need that package or that concept anymore. Are you worried about the fact that storytelling is going to change in such a way that books are no longer the proven concept?
I think that is an interesting and good question, but it actually shows the problem. If you say that you have written your last book, then you have defined your book once again as what we know now as a book that has a number of pages, that is only the word, and that is more or less printed in the physical world, or maybe high-tech, distributed as an e-book. I don't think that is how we're going to see the e-book. Right. But if the question is, will Seth Godin write something that he has spent a lot of time and thinking of, that has been edited by a professional editor and packaged in a way, I think the answer is definitely a yes.
Maybe it's the same as many people say about music. There will be more music in the future than ever before, but there won't be an industry.
No. I think that is interesting, because I spend a lot of time meeting people in the States, both from the book industry and from the media and film and music industry. And in the beginning, everyone said that, oh, this is maybe not in the movie and TV industry, but we are under so severe pressure and we have these problems. But if you look, the music industry is interesting. Is the music industry an industry of crisis? I wouldn't say so. If you define yourself as selling CDs in a record store, yeah, then you have then you not only are, because you aren't anymore, you were in a business that was in a severe problem. I don't think that Spotify is thinking themselves as being in a crisis business, and I don't think, if you look at how much music is produced, how much music is consumed, it isn't a crisis industry in any sense. And I think and hope that we're going to see the same development in the book industry.
But more music is finding its way directly from the producer to the consumer.
Absolutely.
So, any questions for Mattias? Yes.
You're mentioning that you're founding in the US private.
Yeah.
What's going on in China or in Asia in general?
True answer is, from a book perspective, don't know. But since I worked in the TV industry for 5 years, we have been looking a lot, maybe not so much in China, probably more in terms of Southeast Asia. And there we discussed about sort of access and distribution. And there, of course, a lot of interesting things are happening and worth noting. And I think both from a Southeast Asian perspective and maybe Japan when it comes to mobile, it is fascinating to see how they're playing around with, once again, the concept of what is a film, what is a TV program, what is a book. I saw that Amazon a couple of weeks ago are to launch a new format of the short book, that they say that this is going to be between, I think they said 30 and 50 pages. Is that a book, or is it a long article, or what is it?
Is it a magazine?
Is it a magazine? But they said that this is, I think they call it the short novel or short book.
One more question.
I think these changes are having a disruptive impact on companies, but also on authors. And so from the author's perspective, what's going to be different for them if they not only want to be a good quality writer, but also be savvy about the business and position themselves to be successful? What do you see coming for authors?
I think I spent a lot of time with the agents and publishers in the US discussing this. And of course, the relationship in the book industry has been pretty stable. You have an author, you have an editor, and it's sort of a one-to-one relationship, and the editor then goes to the marketing team, and the marketing team then sort of market and sell the book. That will change. And there has been attempts that the author says that I don't need any publishing house, I don't need any author. I can, as Jocke said, have a direct contact with the audience. I think we will see that more when it comes to really established authors, when it comes to authors that have their audience, that maybe not need that much editing. But I think we will continue to see a need, maybe even a greater need, for people that will work with the kind of the product or the material or the text and package it in a way that actually is sellable. But there I think that we as a business has an important task. The most common question these days is, why is ebook so expensive? I mean, you just can distribute it almost for free, and you sell it for as much as a physical book.
Or more.
Or even more. And I think the answer to that is that we, as a business, has been really bad in actually explaining what kind of, not the cost that we put into the product, but the value we put into the product before it actually hits the shelves or the Kindles and so forth. And even though I'm very sort of, I'm rather biased in this area, I think that this business really adds a lot of value in the sort of chain between the first written word to the final product. But of course that will change, and I think you're going to see a lot of new kind of different types of agents coming up. I think the publishing houses are going to be more agent type, securing a lot more rights. There we can learn a lot from the TV business, how they take a concept like Idol, owns all the rights when it comes to records, when it comes to TV, when it comes to shopping center concerts and so forth. And that we probably will see in the book industry as well.
I think we have to let Mattias off the hook right now, but I'm sure you're going to be getting a lot of contacts from the crowd here, because I obviously think you need help in the years to come towards 2020, so use all the good forces. And thank you, Mattias.
And yes, I do, and we do. So please contact me.
Okay, thank you. Mattias, you will speak to you as well. So the last industry. The sound is really horrible in here. Mattias, this is for you as well. You get that one. So the last industry to take the stage is the heaviest of them all, I would say. Film is heavy, and film has sort of managed through the disruption we've seen in the music industry, because you are so heavy and because it's so tough. Yeah. But in a world right now where we see 35 hours of video uploaded every minute to YouTube, I'm sure you have your challenges from all grounds. So to talk a little bit about that, we have Peter Alvarsson, who is founder of Headweb. And correct. The stage is yours. Give Peter a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and Headweb is a video-on-demand service. I don't know if you know it. We have downloads to own. I mean, people buy and download the movies, and we also stream them. We're still in this model where people pay to view a movie every time. And that's more or less where the industry is right now. It's a complex industry and very conservative. One note I did today was that I don't know if it tells which industries we are from. Can I borrow your phone? Eric had a music player / phone as a presenter tool. Mattias had a notebook as a presenter tool. And I don't know what I have. I think this is a video player / phone, which I use.
It's an insanely big phone.
It's a really big phone, but it actually works.
It's from the future because it's so big.
Exactly, it's a very big phone. But I'm using it now as a presenter tool. And to be able to talk about the future, I think it's good to see where we've been and a short history lesson. I actually prepared this in Swedish, so I don't know how this translates to English. But we've been experiencing film for about 100 years, which isn't a very long time compared to books. And the first movies were without sound and no color. Pretty dull if you compare to today's movies. But 1910, people were amazed by this. Moving images, that was new. And people liked it. And if you fast forward, we got surround sound, we got IMAX, Cosmonova, and 3D just last year is kind of new. And technology has, throughout history, paved way for new trends in filmmaking and creativity. Today, movie creators can tell much richer stories and more amazing stories with the help from computers, etc. And on the distribution and production side, we've seen various formats from film, video, TV. We got the DVD and now Blu-ray. But we've also seen formats come and go, like VHS, if anyone remembers that. Pretty crappy format in today. And what's interesting when you look at these technology shifts is that they seem to be like product cycles, which means that a new product is established on the market and something else is replaced. No format, there are almost never dual formats existing on the market. I mean, we had a format war between Betamax and VHS, a format war between Blu-ray and HD DVD, but there seems to be one winner. And the new product almost always has a predefined length before a new product arrives. And the last year's video on demand is the new product. I think the future is digital. It's already here, and a lot of what I was going to talk about has Eric already mentioned. It's about an access model. We're moving into that. And digital distribution has the potential to kill all physical formats, be it books or CDs or DVDs. I think the DVD is in decline, but this doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing for content owners or distributors. It's just another way of distributing the same content. And I don't think I need the VHS anymore when I have streaming, for example, in much better quality. So history paves way for new opportunities. I mean, not history, technology, which should be a good thing. But the film industry has been very slow at adopting to these new trends and new technology. They come in very late. Pirate Bay and file sharing took a lot of space, and I mean the consumer has been using and consuming digital movies or digital music for a very long time, but the industry has only been working with this for a couple of years. Headweb started in 2006 and been very early. I mean, we're veterans in this arena, and even the big American studios didn't sign any contracts until last year. So they're very new in this area. That's also why business models, we have the traditional DVD business models, if you compare. You can buy a movie online, you can rent a movie online. There are very few things like subscriptions or watch a movie and pay with your attention and watch an ad. The industry isn't quite there yet. But video on demand has also opened and democratized the distribution. I mean, if you look at YouTube, super amateurs are there and get millions of hits, as well as professionals. So that's very interesting, and that's going to explode even more. But what technology also does is that it sets higher expectations. We demand more every time. We don't want to watch movies that are black and white with no sound. We want good experiences now, even better. And people are actually willing to pay more for an added experience, such as 3D. People are going to pay some 10 or 20 extra kroners to watch the same movie but with glasses. And internet and long-term usage of file sharing seems to be I mean, people that are used file sharing has an expectation on faster releases, faster and faster releases. I mean, as soon as the movie's out in the US, people are expecting that to be able to, to rent it in Sweden. But the industry isn't there. And hardcore TV fans are also expecting a new episode of Lost, for instance, to be able to be online a minute after it's been aired on TV. And this means that the TV charts are dead, or at least soon. And what's very interesting is that this new era is completely consumer-driven. It comes from the consumer, and that's the opposite of how it's always been before. The distributor has always had the power, but now this is reversed, and the industry has had hard times adapting to this. We're also talking a lot about real-time and real-time societies. Everything should be available on demand, anytime, how I want it, when I want it. And that's very much the access model again. We need to provide, we as a service provider or a platform, we need to provide movies to phones, to all your phones in this room. And there could be a number of manufacturers and a number of technologies, so we need to support a lot of formats, all the devices, to be able to offer a good consumer experience, and which people are willing to pay for. And what about the future? Well, as I said, studios or large companies are still trying to figure out what to do. They're still learning the basics of digital distribution or video on demand. Smaller companies and local, for instance in Sweden, have been online for years. They've tried new business models, digital marketing, PR online, and they're pretty good at it. So they know better what to do, and they're willing to try, and that's key here. Everyone needs to try, because the future isn't about one format or one business model. There are as many types of consumers. There are so many types of consumers that we need to provide a business model for each and every one of them. Some people never want to pay for a movie, then we need to provide a model for them. Some people are willing to pay 39 kroners. Some others are willing to pay 200. So we need to adapt to all these groups. And maybe this is not a big thing, but I think video on demand through computer, phone, or tablet or anything is the future. The DVD will probably be dead in 2014. if you look at these product cycles, if you look at VHS, CD, DVD, they all have the same curve, basically. I mean, they arrive and they get very attractive, and then the decline starts. And they all have a limited amount of years, and we can see DVDs in decline now. And if it follows VHS and CD, it's going to be taken over by streaming in 2014. But that also means that streaming might, or digital distribution might be replaced by something else in like 2024. But what that is, I'm not so sure about. Regarding, well, the industry had high hopes for Blu-ray, which was supposed to replace the DVD. But it hasn't picked up pretty much. It's still a niche product, really. Because there was a format war, the industry was too slow, and the internet came instead, or file sharing. So the consumer just jumped over that physical format and went to digital instead, or online distribution. So, what about cinema? Well, we talked about adding value, and less than 5% of all movie viewing takes place in a cinema in Sweden today. So less than 5%, which isn't much. The rest is DVD, Blu-ray, airplanes, etc., hotels. So the cinema industry or theaters, they have to add value all the time. For instance, 3D, I think we'll see 4D, perhaps live acting with the movie. Actors coming in from the side or interacting with the audience, because that's something people will want to pay for. Otherwise, I can just sit home, watch the same thing through my computer or internet-connected TV. Yeah, and that's about it, I think. Eric stole some of my stuff as well.
Okay, thank you, Petter. Thank you. I think I've already experienced some kind of 4D. I've been to sing-along experiences with both Sound of Music and what's the other one? Little Shop of Horrors, I think. It's amazing. Mamma Mia as well. You know, when the audience really interacts with the film, and that's so fun.
Yeah.
Do you see, from a Headweb perspective, do you see any technical obstacles, or is everything just about legalize? I mean, about the digital rights and the money?
Well, there are some technical difficulties, as we mentioned here. There aren't any standards, or very few standards, and few adopted. And so we, as a platform, has difficulties because we need to adapt to every device. We need to have a movie encoded for this device, and another encode for the iPhone, and another encode for the PlayStation 3, etc., etc. So it adds complexity to our side. But I think the consumer isn't aware of that and shouldn't be aware of it. It should be a streamlined experience.
But the main problem is the digital rights to get the companies to, or the labels to release the movies to you.
Exactly. They're still early days for them.
Any specific questions for Petter? Yes, please.
Could you tell me a little bit more about your view of the business model? I think the overall question about all these speeches is how do people, especially artists, how do they really earn money in the I mean, and what's your view about the consumer's willingness to pay for the content?
That's a very good question, and
it's $1 million question, I think.
Probably, yeah. And we don't see, I mean, people are willing to pay for content. We see that. We have 39 kronor on a new movie release, which is equivalent of a DVD, more or less. But the advantage of doing it digital is that you don't have to go back with the DVD after you rent it. I mean, it expires. And people are willing to pay for access, I mean, easy access, something that is easier than the other thing. And we're looking at, I mean, ad-supported models where the user watch for free, because that's, I mean, everyone likes free. If a user could watch everything for free, they probably would do that rather than pay for it. But that's not going to happen in a few years' time, at least, for movies. So we really need people to pay for at least the new stuff. But we've done tests with pricing, and when we have released a movie 3 months in advance to DVD, we've had that up for 59 kronor, and that sells equal amount of copies as the other releases for 39. So I don't think price is an issue if you deliver a good product, if you deliver a good experience.
And it's something that you have to work on, obviously, to try and find the model. I would have loved to bring in Hanna Sköld here, who financed her movie, Nasty Old People, in a very different way, and it was on the big stage down there, I think. So you've heard that story before, but look up Hanna Sköld and Nasty Old People as well, because maybe it's not always about the consumer paying to Headweb. Maybe they can shortcut it and pay the producer directly. So
yeah, sure.
I think we're going to see a lot of models there. We have to break up here. I'm sorry, but make sure that you grab Peter, Mattias, Eric with all your ideas, and thank you so much for joining us over this lunch session. Thank you.
Oh, tackar.